Stop everything. What just dropped out of Los Angeles changes this offseason way more than most people realize. We've got a massive pass rush decision hanging in the air. We've got a big-name player who could actually turn into trade bait. We've got a signing some people still don't fully get, even though it might end up saving the heart of this offensive line. And then there's one final move that, if it happens, could completely reshape the identity of this team. This is not random offseason noise. This is pressure, risk, strategy, and a front office trying to walk a tightrope without falling. So let me ask you right now, yes or no, do you believe in this plan? Smash that like button, subscribe, and let's get into it because this one is loaded. You know that feeling when a problem looks so huge it feels like there's no fixing it without ripping the whole roster apart? That's what this pass rush situation felt like for Chargers fans. Because one thing was obvious from the jump. This defense could not afford to lose its bite off the edge. Not after what we saw late in the season when this group finally got healthy and started hunting quarterbacks like their lives depended on it. And that's where the Khalil Mack move changes everything. Bringing Mack back on a one-year, $18 million deal was not just about keeping a veteran around. It was a statement. It was the Chargers looking at the league and saying, "We're not backing off, we're not going soft, and we're still trying to win right now." And that brings the whole Odafe Oweh conversation straight into the spotlight. Because before Mack came back, this felt like a full-blown emergency. If the Chargers lost Mack and then also let Oweh walk, they would be staring at the possibility of rebuilding their entire edge rush in one offseason. That's the kind of gamble that can wreck a year before it starts. It gets expensive, it gets desperate, and most of the time, it blows up in your face. But once Mack was secured, something changed. The Chargers bought themselves flexibility. Real flexibility. Oweh produced. There's no dancing around that. In 12 games with Los Angeles, he put up 7.5 sacks and 13 quarterback hits. That's not empty production. That's impact. That's a guy helping turn a unit into a problem. Over the final 8 weeks, once Mack, Oweh, and Tuli Tuipulotu were all rolling together, the Chargers piled up 19 sacks. That's not a fluke. That's what a dangerous front looks like when the pieces finally click. But here's the question nobody can hide from. Is Oweh worth close to $20 million a year? Be honest, would you pay that today? That's where contenders separate emotion from discipline. Liking a player is one thing. Building your cap around what he might become is another. If the market pushes Oweh into that second tier of highly paid edge rushers, the Chargers may have to step back and ask whether there's a smarter route. Maybe it's a cheaper veteran. Maybe it's a draft pick. Maybe it's a rotational approach. But Mack coming back gave them the freedom to explore those doors instead of getting shoved into one. And somehow, even with all that heat around the defense, the next issue might be even more uncomfortable. Because now the spotlight swings to Quentin Johnston. And this one could divide the fan base in a hurry. Some decisions hurt more because they involve hope. Not because the player was a total bust. Not because he gave you nothing. But because he improved just enough to make you wonder whether the breakout is still coming. That's where Quentin Johnston is right now. He took steps forward. That matters. He posted career highs with 735 receiving yards and 8 touchdowns. That's progress. Real progress. But let's be honest with each other. He still hasn't become the kind of receiver who tilts the field by himself. And when a player lands in that gray area, the NFL gets cold fast. In May, the Chargers have to decide on Johnston's 5th-year option, worth around $18 million. And look, that number isn't outrageous in today's receiver market. That's not the issue. The issue is whether he's earned that kind of commitment. Because paying a guy like a long-term piece when he still feels more like a question mark than an answer, that's how teams get trapped. Now add the trade chatter. Johnston's name has reportedly surfaced in league conversations as a possible trade target, and that doesn't happen by accident. When insiders start putting a player in that kind of discussion, it usually means calls are being made somewhere behind the scenes. And suddenly, other things start making more sense. The Chargers being linked to outside wide receivers. The whispers around bigger names. The idea that maybe this front office is willing to reset the room more aggressively than people think. So here's the real question. Are the Chargers considering selling high on Johnston at the exact moment his value finally has some life? Be honest again. If a team offered a fourth-round pick right now, would you do it? That's the crossroads. If the Chargers aren't planning to pick up that fifth-year option, then they have to think like sharks. Do they keep him, hope for a bigger breakout, and maybe let him walk later for a comp pick? Or do they cash out now in a market that's hungry for receivers and turn uncertainty into draft capital? That matters even more when this team only has 5 picks in the 2026 draft. And here's the part fans can't ignore. This regime didn't draft him. That changes everything. New decision makers usually have less patience, less attachment, and way less fear about moving on from inherited talent. But while everybody's arguing about whether Johnston should stay or go, there's another move that may have already changed the core of the offense. Quietly, efficiently, and maybe in a bigger way than most fans realize. Not every signing shows up with fireworks. Some signings walk in quietly and then end up changing the entire season. That's exactly how Taya Dash feels. A lot of fans saw the contract, nodded, and moved on. But when you really dig into it, this might be one of the smartest moves the Chargers have made all offseason. Because the thing that wrecked too many drives in 2025 wasn't Justin Herbert's arm talent. It wasn't the playbook. It was pressure straight up the middle. It was the interior offensive line collapsing, killing timing, blowing up reads, and forcing chaos before a play even had a chance to breathe. That wears down a quarterback. That shrinks an offense. That crushes trust. Bradley Bozeman retiring only made the issue impossible to ignore. And the best part? The Chargers didn't wait around while the rest of the league played games. Biadasz had already been officially released, making him a street free agent, which meant Los Angeles could move before the legal tampering frenzy even opened. That's not luck. That's awareness. That's a front office seeing the opening and attacking it. And the production gap here is not subtle. Bozeman posted a 51.7 overall PFF grade in 2025, dead last among qualifying centers. Biadasz came in at 70.7, ranking near the top of the position. That's not a minor upgrade. That's a real jump in quality at the center of the line. And when your center gets better, everything gets cleaner. Protection calls get sharper, the run game gets steadier, Herbert gets that extra half second. And in the NFL, that extra half second can be the difference between a sack and a shot play over the top. If this breakdown is hitting for you and you want to see the Chargers get back where they belong, hit like right now. Seriously, help this community grow. And if you're not subscribed yet, join up, because this offseason is just getting started. Because here's what makes this move dangerous for the rest of the league. It shows the Chargers are not just patching holes. They're trying to fix the foundation. They're trying to stop living on the edge at the spot that hurt them the most. And once a team starts repairing the foundation, that's when the real swing can come next. Which brings us to the biggest boom or bust name in this entire conversation. Elijah Vera-Tucker. This is the one that could be genius, or a disaster. And that's exactly why it feels like the climax of this whole story. Elijah Vera-Tucker has the kind of skill set that can change an offensive line overnight. He's talented, versatile, powerful, technically sound, and capable of lining up in multiple spots. Guys like that do not come around often. On pure ability, he looks like exactly the kind of player you bet on if you're serious about protecting your franchise quarterback and raising the ceiling of the entire offense. But then the other side hits you like a blindside sack. 3 major season-ending injuries in 5 seasons. That's not a small concern. That's not bad luck you can just wave away. That's the kind of medical history that forces every front office to ask the hardest question in football. Are we buying a star? Or are we buying risk dressed up like hope? And yet, when Vera-Tucker is on the field, he can flat out play. He's been a very good blocker. He brings real value. He brings flexibility. He brings the type of upside that can make an offensive line look tougher, deeper, and more complete. That's why he may still have a strong market despite all the injury concerns. Talent like that makes teams talk themselves into chances. So now the debate gets real. Should the Chargers take the swing? Because if there's one thing this team cannot keep doing, it's gambling with Herbert's protection through duct tape and emergency fixes. If Vera-Tucker stays healthy, this could be the kind of move people look back on and call a steal. The kind of move that changes the offense from fragile to dangerous. But if the injuries hit again, then it becomes the exact kind of high-risk decision fans never forgive. That's why this is bigger than one player. This is about philosophy. Is this front office playing scared, or is it willing to chase greatness even when the path is risky? One side of the fan base will call it reckless. The other side will call it bold. And honestly, that tension is exactly why this moment matters. At the end of the day, this offseason is starting to tell us something about the Chargers. They don't want to just hang around. They want to rise. They're trying to balance urgency, intelligence, risk, and ambition without pretending every move is comfortable. There are expensive choices on defense, real dilemmas on offense, and at least one possible swing that could completely change how this team protects Justin Herbert moving forward. So now it comes down to this. What matters more, playing it safe or chasing the highest ceiling possible? Drop your answer in the comments, share this with another Chargers fan, and let's keep this conversation rolling, because the Bolt fam is watching every move.